The council chamber was huge. Jake Morrison had never seen anything like it before. The ceiling went up so high that he could not see the top. Strange lights floated in the air without any wires or supports. Around the curved walls, dozens of alien beings sat in seats that looked like they were made of liquid metal. Jake stood in the center of the room with 5 other humans. They all wore their best uniforms, but next to these aliens they felt very small and simple. The translator device in Jake's ear made small buzzing sounds as it worked to change the alien words into English. Zephyr rose from his seat. He was tall and thin, with blue skin that seemed to shine under the floating lights. His eyes were large and golden, and when he looked at the humans, Jake felt like he was being studied like a bug under a microscope. "Humans of Earth," Zephyr's voice was smooth and deep. "Today marks a great day for your species. You have been accepted into the Galactic Council. This is a gift that few worlds receive." Jake tried to keep his face calm, but inside he was excited. For 2 years, Earth had been trying to join the galactic community. Now it was finally happening. "But we have more than just membership to offer you," Zephyr continued. "We wish to give your people a new home. A world where you can grow and build without the limits of your crowded planet." A holographic image appeared in the air above them. Jake gasped. The planet was beautiful. Green continents spread across blue oceans like emeralds on silk. White clouds drifted across the surface, and everything looked peaceful and perfect. "This is Verdania," Zephyr said. "It is what we call a Classa paradise world. The climate is perfect. The soil is rich. The wildlife is gentle. Any civilized species could live there in comfort and safety." Jake looked at the other humans with him. Admiral Susan Price nodded slowly. Dr. Martin Gray was taking notes as fast as he could write. They were all thinking the same thing. This was too good to be true. "There are no dangerous storms," Zephyr went on. "No harmful radiation, no poisonous plants or deadly animals. We have prepared safe areas for your people to live. All you need to do is bring your families and start your new life." "What's the catch?" Jake asked before he could stop himself. "Several." Aliens in the chamber made sounds that might have been laughter. Zephyr's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. "There is no catch, human. This is a gift. Your species is new to space travel. You need time to learn and grow. Verdania will give you that time." Jake wanted to ask more questions, but Admiral Price touched his arm. She knew when to push and when to accept what they were offered. "We accept your generous gift," she said. "When can we begin moving our people?" "Immediately," Zephyr replied. "We have transport ships ready. You may take 500 colonists on the first trip." 3 months later, Jake stood on the bridge of the transport ship New Horizon. He was no longer just a military officer. Now he was Captain Jake Morrison, leader of the first human colony on an alien world. Behind him, 500 people were getting ready for their new life. Ben Carter sat with his wife Lisa and their twin daughters Amy and Kate. The girls were only 10 years old, but they were excited about living on a new planet. Ben worked as an engineer, and Lisa had been a survival instructor back on Earth. They thought their skills would be useful on Verdania. Dr. Ryan Webb was in the science section, checking his equipment one more time. He was a biologist who specialized in studying new forms of life. Dr. Emma Foster was with him. She knew all about atmospheres and weather patterns. Together, they would make sure the planet was safe for humans. Sergeant Dan Phillips was in charge of security. He had 20 soldiers with him, just in case there was trouble. Jake hoped they would not be needed, but it was better to be safe. "Captain," the pilot called out. "We're coming up on Verdania now." Jake looked out the front window and felt his breath catch in his throat. The planet was even more beautiful than the hologram had shown. The green looked deeper and richer. The blue of the oceans was so pure it almost hurt to look at. Everything about it said home in a way that made his chest feel warm. "It's perfect," Lisa Carter whispered. She had come up to the bridge with her family to see their new world. "Look at those mountains." Amy pointed to a range of peaks that rose up from the main continent. They were covered with what looked like crystal formations that caught the sunlight and threw it back in rainbow colors. "And the forest," Kate added. They go on forever. Jake activated the communication system. Attention all colonists. We have arrived at Verdania. Please prepare for landing procedures. As the ship moved closer to the planet, Jake felt a strange feeling in his stomach. Not sickness, more like worry. The planet was too perfect. Too beautiful. Too easy. In his experience, nothing in life was ever this simple. Back on the Council space station, Zephyr watched the human ship disappear toward Verdania. Other Council members gathered around him. Do you think they will last longer than the others? Asked Vexahol, a creature that looked like a walking tree. Probably not, Zephyr replied. Humans are primitive. They barely have space travel. When they see what Verdania is really like, they will beg us to move them to the safe habitats we prepared. The Zelthans lasted 3 months, Vexahol said. The Karathi made it almost 6 months before they gave up. The humans will be different, said another voice. This one belonged to Quenter, who had skin like metal and eyes like red stars. They are more stubborn than the others, but stubbornness will not help them when the shadow hunters come. Zephyr nodded. We will give them time to settle in. Let them think they are safe. When reality hits them, they will be grateful for our help. It is better to have them contained on Verdania than spreading through the galaxy causing trouble. None of them mentioned the real reason Verdania was empty. None of them talked about the Kefmori, the ancient race that had once lived there. The Council had found their cities, their technology, their records. But the Kefmori themselves had simply vanished one day, leaving behind only questions and empty buildings. Some said they had died from a plague. Others believed they had evolved beyond physical form. A few whispered that they had been waiting, testing each new species that came to their world, looking for something specific. But the Council did not believe in old stories. They believed in facts. And the fact was that every species they had sent to Verdania had either fled or died within a year. The humans would be no different. On Verdania, the New Horizon touched down in a clearing near a crystal-clear river. The landing was smooth and perfect. As the ship's doors opened, sweet-smelling air flowed in. It carried the scent of flowers and fresh-growing things. Jake was the first to step onto the surface. The ground felt solid under his feet. The air tasted clean and pure. Everything looked exactly as promised. Welcome to paradise, he said softly. Behind him, 500 humans stepped out to start their new life. They did not know that this paradise had teeth. They did not know that every beautiful thing they saw could kill them in ways they had never imagined, but they were about to learn. The first 3 days on Verdania were like a dream. The colonists set up their temporary shelters near the landing site. The weather was warm and pleasant. The river water looked clean and tasted good. Children played in the grass while adults unpacked supplies and planned their permanent settlement. Amy and Kate Carter ran through the meadows chasing what looked like butterflies with wings that sparkled like diamonds. Ben Carter worked with other engineers to set up the basic camp. Lisa Carter taught people how to identify which plants might be safe to eat. Everything seemed perfect. On the 4th day, things started to change. Dr. Ryan Webb was the first to notice something wrong. He had been studying the large animals that grazed near the camp. They looked like deer, but bigger, with soft brown fur and gentle eyes. The colonists had been calling them meadow deer because they seemed so peaceful. Ryan approached one of the animals slowly, holding out his hand. He wanted to see if it would let him get close. The animal looked at him with its big eyes. Then, without warning, it charged. Ryan threw himself to the side. Just as the creature's horn slashed through the air where his head had been, the animal made a sound like a scream and charged again. Ryan ran as fast as he could back to the camp, shouting for help. "They're territorial," he gasped when he reached safety. "Those gentle deer almost killed me." The same day, Lisa Carter was leading a group to gather fruit from nearby trees. The fruits looked like apples, but they were blue and smelled sweet. Lisa tested one carefully, taking just a small bite. It tasted wonderful. Within an hour, her face was covered in red bumps. Her throat felt tight and it was hard to breathe. Dr. Emma Foster had to give her medicine to stop the allergic reaction. "No one eat the blue fruits," Lisa told everyone between wheezes. "They're not safe for humans." But the problems were just starting. On the 5th day, people began complaining about headaches. They felt dizzy and sick. Some people said they could hear strange sounds that made their skin crawl. Dr. Emma Foster found the source. The beautiful crystal formations that covered the mountains were making sounds that human ears could barely hear. These low sounds traveled for miles and made people feel confused and scared. "We need to move the camp away from here," Emma told Jake. "These crystals are affecting everyone's health." But when they tried to move further away, they found new problems. The air itself seemed different in some places. People would start coughing and wheezing for no reason. Emma tested the atmosphere with her instruments and found that it changed from place to place in ways that were impossible to predict. "The air has pockets of different gases," she explained to Jake. "What we're breathing right now might be fine, but 50 feet that way could make us very sick." The water was another problem. After a week of drinking from the river, people started getting stomach sickness. Even after they boiled it, the water made people feel bad. Emma discovered that it contained minerals that built up in human bodies over time. "We need to filter everything we drink," she said. "And even then I'm not sure it's completely safe." Then Carter was getting frustrated. He was supposed to help build their new settlement, but everywhere they looked, there were new dangers. He decided to explore beyond the safe area around their camp to find a better place to live. "I'll just go a few miles," he told Lisa. "Maybe there's a better spot where the air is cleaner and the water is safer." "Take someone with you," Lisa said. She had a bad feeling about him going alone. "I'll be fine," Ben replied. "I'll be back before dark." Ben walked into the forest that surrounded their landing site. The trees were tall and beautiful, with leaves that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Everything was quiet and peaceful. Too quiet. Ben had been walking for about an hour when he saw something move in the corner of his eye. When he turned to look, nothing was there. Just trees and shadows. He kept walking, but the feeling of being watched got stronger. Then he saw a shape that seemed to be made of shadow itself, moving between the trees. It was hard to focus on. Every time he tried to look directly at it, it seemed to fade away. Then he realized there was more than one. They were all around him, moving through the forest like ghosts. Ben started walking faster toward the camp. The shadow shapes followed him. When he started running, they started running too. Ben crashed through the forest as fast as he could go. Behind him, he could hear sounds like breathing and footsteps, but when he looked back, he could barely see anything. The shadow creatures seemed to appear and disappear like they weren't completely real. He made it back to camp just as the sun was setting. He was covered in scratches and breathing hard. "There's something in the forest," he gasped. "Something that hunts in packs. They followed me, but they stopped at the edge of the clearing." That same evening, Amy Carter was playing near the edge of camp when the weather suddenly changed. One minute it was warm and sunny. The next minute, the temperature dropped so fast that she could see her breath. Then it started to rain. But this was not normal rain. Where the drops hit Amy's skin, they burned like fire. She screamed and ran toward the shelters. But the rain was falling everywhere. Lisa Carter heard her daughter scream and ran outside. She saw Amy trying to cover herself with her hands as the burning rain fell on her. Lisa grabbed a tarp and threw it over both of them, then pulled Amy into the nearest shelter. Amy's arms and face had red marks where the rain had touched her. The pain made her cry, and Lisa held her tight while Dr. Emma Foster treated the burns. "It's acid rain," Emma said quietly to Jake. "The rain here contains chemicals that can burn human skin." Jake looked around at his people. In just 1 week, they had discovered that the animals were dangerous, the plants were poisonous, the crystals made them sick, the air was unreliable, the water needed special treatment, there were invisible predators in the forest, and even the rain could hurt them. This was not the paradise the Galactic Council had promised. Jake activated the communication system to contact the council station. It took several hours for them to respond. Ah, Captain Morrison, Zephyr voice came through the speakers. How are you enjoying your new home? We're having some problems, Jake said carefully. The environment here is more dangerous than we were told. Dangerous? Zephyr sounded surprised, but Jake thought he heard something else in the alien's voice, like he was not really surprised at all. The animals are aggressive. The plants are toxic. The weather is unpredictable and harmful. We need better information about this planet. There was a long pause. When Zephyr spoke again, his voice was different, less friendly. Captain Morrison, every world has its challenges. The previous species who attempted to colonize Verdania found it difficult as well. That is why we prepared safe habitats for you. We suggest you move your people into the biodomes we constructed. They will protect you from the local environment. What? Previous species? Jake asked. Oh, several groups tried to settle Verdania over the years. The Zelthans, the Korathi, others. They all found the planet too challenging for their tastes. But the biodomes we built will keep you safe and comfortable. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. You knew this planet was dangerous. You knew other species had failed here. But you didn't tell us? We told you it was a paradise world, Zephyr replied. And it is for those who know how to use the facilities we provided. The biodomes have everything you need: controlled climate, purified air and water, safe food production. You simply need to accept our help. Jake looked around at his people. They were listening to every word. He could see the fear in their faces, but he could also see something else: determination. We'll think about it, Jake said finally. Do not think too long, Zephyr replied. Verdania can be very unforgiving to those who try to live outside the safe zones. The communication ended, leaving the colonists in silence. So what do we do? Ben Carter asked. Jake looked at his people, scientists, engineers, families, soldiers. They had come here to build a new life, not to live in cages, even comfortable ones. We learn, Jake said. We adapt. We survive. And we prove that humans don't need anyone's biodomes to make a life on this world. He didn't know how they would do it, but he knew they had to try. Because if they gave up now and moved into the Council's safe habitats, they would never be free. Jake Morrison sat in his command tent looking at the reports from his teams. 2 weeks had passed since the acid rain incident. Every day brought new problems, but Jake was starting to see patterns. More importantly, he was starting to see solutions. We're not giving up, he told his senior staff. The Council thinks we'll run to their biodomes like scared children. They're wrong. Dr. Ryan Webb had been working day and night on the air problem. He took apart breathing masks from the ship's emergency supplies and combined them with air filters from the ventilation system. The result was not pretty, but it worked. These modified respirators can handle most of the atmospheric changes. Ryan explained to the group gathered around his work table. I've tested them in the worst air pockets I could find. They're not perfect, but they'll keep us alive while we work. Ryan had also been studying the ship's life support systems. He figured out how to build small air cleaning stations using parts from broken equipment. Each station could make a safe breathing zone about 20 feet wide. We can set these up wherever we need to work, he said. It's like carrying our own atmosphere with us. Dr. Emma Foster was working on the water problem. She found that the dangerous minerals in the river water could be removed using a combination of boiling, filtering, and adding chemicals from their medical supplies. It takes time, but we can make the water safe, she reported. I'm also working on a way to predict the atmospheric changes. The crystal formations seem to affect local weather patterns. If we can map their influence, we can know when and where the air will be dangerous. But the most surprising discoveries came from Lisa. Carter, after her allergic reaction to the blue fruits, Lisa had been very careful about testing new plants. She started with tiny amounts and worked her way up. What she found changed everything. The blue fruits are poisonous to eat, she told the evening meeting. But if you squeeze out the juice and let it dry, it makes an excellent insect repellent. The bugs here hate it. Lisa had been a survival instructor on Earth, and those skills were proving very valuable. She taught people how to test plants safely, how to find clean water sources, and how to build shelters that could protect against sudden weather changes. The acid-producing plants near the river aren't just dangerous, she continued. The acid can be used to etch metal and cut through tough materials. We can use it as a tool. She had also discovered that some of the poisonous plants were only dangerous when eaten raw. Cooked properly, they became safe and nutritious food. We're not just surviving, Lisa said with a smile. We're learning to use this planet instead of fighting it. The shadow predators were a bigger challenge, but Sergeant Dan Phillips was not easily scared. He had fought in difficult places on Earth, and these alien hunters reminded him of tactics he had seen before. They hunt in packs, Don explained to his security team. They use the shadows to hide, and they try to separate their prey from the group, but they have weaknesses. Don had been studying the creatures for days, watching from safe distances. He noticed that they seemed to avoid bright lights and that they moved differently when certain sounds were made. They react to light frequencies, he said. Not normal light, but strobing patterns. I think it hurts their eyes or confuses them. Using emergency lights from the ship, Dan's team built simple strobe devices. The first test was terrifying. Don walked into the forest alone, carrying one of the new devices. The shadow creatures followed him as expected, but when he turned on the strobe light, they stopped and backed away. It works, he reported back. They don't like the flashing lights at all. Soon, Dan's teams were making regular patrols into the forest. They mapped safe paths and identified areas where the shadow creatures gathered. More importantly, they learned that the creatures were not mindlessly aggressive. They were territorial and would leave humans alone if their territory was respected. They're actually protecting something, Don realized. There are areas in the forest they won't let anything near. We need to find out what's in those places. The biggest surprise came from Ben Carter. After his encounter with the shadow creatures, he had been studying the aggressive meadow deer from a safe distance. He noticed that they only attacked when approached from certain directions. They're not randomly violent, Ben told his wife, Lisa. They're protecting their young. And they seem to calm down around certain smells. Ben had always been good with animals. On Earth, he had raised horses as a hobby. He started experimenting with different approaches to the alien creatures. Humans naturally produce certain scents when we're calm and non-threatening, he explained. Animals on Earth respond to those scents. Maybe these creatures do too. Ben's first successful contact with a meadow deer happened by accident. He was sitting quietly near the edge of their grazing area, just watching and taking notes. One of the animals wandered closer and closer until it was only a few feet away. Ben stayed very still and let the creature smell him. After several tense minutes, the animal allowed Ben to touch its neck. They respond to patience and respect, Ben reported excitedly. Just like Earth animals, but the signals are different. Within a week, Ben had several of the creatures eating from his hand. The meadow deer turned out to be excellent pack animals. They were strong, intelligent, and once they trusted a human, they would follow simple commands. We can use them to carry supplies and help with farming, Ben said. They know this planet better than we do. They can show us where to find safe water and good soil. All of these discoveries came together when Jake made a decision that shocked everyone. We're moving the main settlement, he announced. Not to the Council's biodomes, but to a new location we choose ourselves. The new settlement site was in a valley 2 miles from their landing spot. It was far enough from the crystal formations to avoid the worst of the sound effects, but close enough to a clean water source that Lisa had discovered. The meadow deer had shown Ben where to find it. The colonists worked together to build their new home. They used techniques that combined Earth knowledge with what they had learned about Verdania. The shelters were designed to protect against acid rain and sudden temperature changes. The air cleaning stations provided safe breathing zones throughout the settlement. Lisa's discovery about useful plants led to the development of new farming techniques. Instead of trying to grow Earth crops in alien soil, they learned to cultivate the native plants that were safe for humans. The results were better than anyone had hoped. The soil here is incredibly rich, Dr. Emma Foster reported. With the right techniques, we can grow more food per acre than we ever could on Earth. The early warning system Emma, developed using crystal formation patterns, allowed the colonists to predict dangerous weather changes hours in advance. When acid rain was coming, everyone had time to take shelter. When the air was going to change, they could activate extra filtering systems. Most surprising of all, the colonists made contact with some of the planet's intelligent life forms. Dan's security patrols had found the areas the shadow creatures were protecting. In those places, strange structures rose from the ground like metal trees. The structures hummed with energy and seemed to respond to human presence. "There's something alive in there," Don reported. "Not like the shadow creatures. Something older and more intelligent." When the colonists approached the structures carefully and respectfully, lights began to flash in patterns. Dr. Ryan Webb recognized it as a form of communication. "They're trying to talk to us," he said in amazement. The first successful communication was simple, basic mathematical concepts and star patterns. But it was enough to establish that there was an intelligence on Verdania that wanted to make contact with the humans. Jake stood on a hill overlooking their new settlement as the sun set over Verdania. Below him, his people were building homes, tending gardens, and living lives that the Galactic Council had thought impossible. The settlement now covered several acres. Paths connected different work areas. Gardens grew native plants that provided food and useful materials. The meadow deer grazed peacefully near human homes, and children played safely in areas protected by early warning systems. "We did it?" Lisa Carter said, joining Jake on the hill. "We actually did it," Jake nodded, but he was thinking about the future. The council had expected them to fail. When they discovered that humans were not only surviving but thriving on Verdania, there would be consequences. "This is just the beginning," Jake said. "When the council finds out what we've accomplished here, everything is going to change." In the distance, one of the alien communication structures pulsed with light, as if responding to his words. Whatever intelligence lived on Verdania seemed to agree change was coming, and the humans were ready for it. The alarm sounds filled the Galactic Council monitoring station. Technician Velmore stared at his screens in confusion. The sensors watching Verdania were showing activity levels that made no sense. "Sir," Velmore called to his supervisor. "I think our equipment is broken." Supervisor Quenneville floated over to look at the readings. His nettle skin gleamed under the station lights as he studied the data. "What is the problem?" Quenneville asked. "The human colony on Verdania," Velmore explained. "Our sensors show massive energy signatures, construction activity, agricultural development. It looks like they're building a major settlement." Quenneville's red eyes flashed brighter. "That cannot be correct. Check the date stamps." Velmore checked his readings again. "Sir, it's been 6 months since the humans landed. The activity levels have been increasing every week." 6 months? Quenneville was shocked. Most of species barely lasted 3 months on Verdania before begging to be relocated to the safe biodomes. "Show me the detailed scans." The holographic display showed Verdania's main continent. Where the human landing site had been, there were now multiple settlements, connected by roads. Energy signatures indicated advanced technology being used throughout the area. Most impossible of all, the agricultural zones showed crop yields that exceeded what should have been possible on that planet. "Contact Council Leader Zefter immediately," Quenneville ordered. "He needs to see this." 2 hours later, Zefter stood in the monitoring station looking at the impossible data. Around him, other council members whispered among themselves. The hegemony military commander, General Korthax, studied the readings with growing concern. "This must be an equipment error," Zefter said, but his voice lacked confidence. "The humans are primitive. They barely have space travel. They cannot have accomplished this." "The sensors do not lie," Quenneville replied. "The energy signatures are real. The construction activity is real, and look at this." He pointed to a section of the display that showed the forest areas. "The shadow creature populations have stabilized. For centuries, they have been declining due to environmental stress. Now their numbers are actually increasing." General Korthax stepped forward. His species looked like walking armor, and his voice sounded like grinding metal. I recommend immediate investigation. If the humans have developed new technology, we need to know about it. Zephyr nodded slowly. Prepare an investigation ship. I will lead the team personally. The Council investigation ship arrived at Verdania 3 days later. Zephyr brought a full team with him, scientists, military observers, and technology specialists. They expected to find either a failing colony ready for evacuation or perhaps some kind of fraud. What they found instead changed everything. The ship's scanners showed 5 separate human settlements scattered across the continent. Roads and transport routes connected them all. Energy readings indicated sophisticated technology, but not technology the Council recognized. Request permission to land, Zephyr transmitted to the main human settlement. Permission granted, came Jake Morrison's voice. Landing pad coordinates are being transmitted now. The landing pad was a surprise in itself. It was clearly built by humans, but it used construction techniques that none of the Council species had developed. The material seemed to be a combination of metal from their ship and processed local minerals. Jake Morrison was waiting for them with a delegation of other humans. Zephyr noticed immediately that they all looked healthy and confident. There were no signs of the stress and desperation he had expected. Welcome to New Haven, Jake said with a smile. We're glad you could visit. Zephyr looked around in amazement. The settlement was bustling with activity. Humans worked alongside large alien creatures that he recognized as the aggressive meadow deer. Children played in gardens filled with plants that should have been deadly to them. In the distance, he could see construction projects that defied everything he knew about Verdania. How are you alive? Zephyr asked bluntly. Jake's smile widened. We learned, we adapted. Would you like a tour? The tour was like a journey through an impossible dream. Dr. Emma Foster showed them the atmospheric monitoring stations that predicted and compensated for Verdania's dangerous air pockets. Lisa Carter demonstrated how the colonists had learned to use the planet's toxic plants as tools and medicines. Ben Carter introduced them to domesticated meadow deer that carried supplies and helped with farming. This should not be possible, whispered Dr. Thekelen, the Council's lead scientist. Every other species we sent here died or fled. Every other species tried to change the planet to suit their needs, Dr. Emma Foster replied. We changed ourselves to work with the planet. She led them to her research center, where walls were covered with charts and data about Verdania's ecosystem. When we arrived, we thought this was a hostile environment. But it's not hostile, it's complex. Every danger has a purpose, and every purpose has a solution. Emma pointed to a large display showing the planet's ecological balance. The shadow creatures aren't random predators. They're ecosystem managers. The crystal formations don't just make harmful sounds, they also purify the air and water. The acid rain isn't just destructive, it's part of a natural recycling process that keeps the soil fertile. You're saying the planet is designed this way? General Korthax asked. I'm saying it evolved this way for a reason, Emma replied. And we learned to be part of that evolution instead of fighting against it. The biggest shock came when they visited the communication structures in the forest. Zephyr had read about these in the old reports, but seeing them active was completely different. The metal tree-like structures hummed with energy and pulsed with lights in complex patterns. Dr. Ryan Webb stood near one of them with a translation device he had built. We've been learning their language, Ryan explained. It's mathematical at first, but it gets more complex. Their language? Zephyr stared at the structures. You mean something is alive in there? Not alive the way we think of it, Ryan said. But intelligent, and very old. As if responding to his words, the structures began to pulse in a new pattern. Ryan's translation device made sounds that gradually formed into words. Greetings, Council species, the voice said. It sounded like music made of mathematics. We have been waiting for you to return. Zephyr felt his legs go weak. You can speak? We have always been able to speak. You have never been able to listen. But the human species learned to listen. They learned to understand. They passed our first test. Test? General Korthak stepped forward. What test? The structures pulsed brighter. For 10,000 cycles, we have tested species that came to our world. We watched them try to tame what they feared, to destroy what they did not understand, to hide from what challenged them. All failed. Images began to appear in the air above the structures, holographic pictures that showed the history of Verdania. Zefter saw the Zelthans trying to cut down entire forests. He saw the Korathi attempting to drain the rivers. He saw dozens of other species, all trying to make Verdania into something it was not. The human species is different, the voice continued. They do not seek to conquer. They seek to understand. They do not demand that the world change for them. They change themselves for the world. This is wisdom. Who are you? Zefter whispered. We are the Kethmori. We built this world as a testing ground, and then we evolved beyond the need for physical form. We became the planet itself, watching and waiting for a species worthy of true partnership. Jake Morrison stepped forward. They've been teaching us not just how to survive here, but how to improve the planet, how to make it better for all the life forms that share it. Emma Foster activated another display. Look at these numbers. Since we arrived, soil fertility has increased by 30%. Water purity has improved. Air quality is more stable. Even the shadow creatures are healthier and more numerous. This is impossible, Dr. Thekelin muttered. No, the Kethmori voice replied. This is what happens when a species works with nature instead of against it. The human species has shown us something we had not seen in 10,000 cycles, the ability to improve while adapting, to strengthen while cooperating. Zefter looked around at the thriving human settlement, at the healthy ecosystem, at the impossible partnership between aliens and humans. Everything the Council believed about species classification, about strength and weakness, about civilization and primitiveness, was crumbling around him. What does this mean? He asked. Jake Morrison smiled. It means the Deathworld classification was wrong. Not because Verdania isn't dangerous, but because you never understood what it takes to survive here. The human species has earned our knowledge, the Kethmori announced. Technologies that took us millions of cycles to develop, we share freely with those who have proven worthy. Your council will find that humanity is no longer the primitive species you believe them to be. The structures pulsed once more, and new images appeared, technologies beyond anything the council possessed. Star maps showing hidden worlds, knowledge that could transform galactic civilization. Zefter realized that in trying to hide humanity on a dangerous world, the Council had accidentally created the most powerful partnership in the galaxy. The Galactic Council emergency session lasted for 3 days. Representatives from 200 species argued, debated, and tried to understand what had happened on Verdania. The chamber that had once seemed so grand to Jake Morrison was now filled with confusion and fear. Zefter stood before the assembly, his blue skin pale with stress. The holographic images floating above him showed the impossible truth. Humans had not just survived on Verdania, they had transformed it into something better than it had ever been. The evidence is clear, Zefter said to the assembled aliens. The human species has achieved what no other species has accomplished in 10,000 years. They have formed a partnership with the Kethmori. Angry voices filled the chamber. Representative Vexahol, the tree-like being, spoke first. This changes nothing. Humans are still primitive. They still lack advanced technology. One successful colony does not make them our equals. One successful colony? General Korthak stepped forward, his armor-like skin gleaming. They did not just survive a death world. They improved it. The ecological data shows environmental enhancement beyond our best terraforming technology. Dr. Thekelin, the Council's chief scientist, activated his own display. The technologies the Kethmori are sharing with humans are more advanced than anything in our databases. Energy systems we do not understand. Environmental control methods that seem impossible. If humans have access to this knowledge, then they are no longer the weak species we thought they were. Finished Council Leader Morthic. whose crystal body sparkled with nervous energy, but not everyone was ready to accept the new reality. Representative Quentor, with his metal skin and red eyes, stood up angrily. "This is unacceptable. Humans were given Verdania to contain them, not to make them powerful. We cannot allow primitives to upset the galactic order." "What do you suggest?" Zephyr asked tiredly. "Military action," Quentor replied. "Remove the humans from Verdania before they become a threat. Relocate them to a world where they cannot cause problems." General Korthax made a sound like grinding gears. "That would mean war with the Kethmori. A species so advanced they evolved beyond physical form. Do you want to fight beings who can control an entire planet?" The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to fight a war they could not win. "There is another option," came a new voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Elder Zinakari, the oldest member of the council. She rarely spoke, but when she did, everyone listened. "We accept the new reality," Elder Zinakari said as she moved slowly to the center of the chamber. "We acknowledge that our understanding of strength and weakness was incomplete. We invite the humans to join us as equals and learn from their success." "Equals?" Quentor sputtered. "They have been council members for less than 2 years, and in that time they have accomplished what we have not achieved in millennia," Elder Zinakari replied calmly. "Perhaps it is time to question our assumptions about civilization and progress." The vote was close, but Elder Zinakari's wisdom carried the day. By a margin of only 12 votes, the council agreed to offer humanity a new status, full partnership, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. But there was more. "The humans have demonstrated unique abilities," Elder Zinakari continued. "They can adapt to environments we consider impossible. They can form partnerships with species we cannot even communicate with. These abilities could benefit all council worlds." And so the Human Adaptation Corps was born. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship Pioneer, watching as they approached another impossible world. This one was called Zarian, a desert planet with acid storms and underground predators that had killed 3 previous colonial attempts. "What do you think, Dad?" asked Amy Carter, now 11 years old and serving as the mission's environmental specialist. Growing up on Verdania had given her abilities that amazed even the human adults. She could sense atmospheric changes hours before instruments detected them, and she had learned to communicate with alien life forms using methods no one fully understood. "I think we're going to teach the galaxy something new," Jake replied behind them. The ship carried a team of 50 humans chosen for their adaptability and problem-solving skills. Dr. Emma Foster was developing new environmental monitoring techniques. Dr. Ryan Webb was working on biological adaptation protocols. Ben and Lisa Carter were training teams in survival and animal handling techniques. Most importantly, they carried communication equipment based on Kethmori technology. If there was intelligent life on Zarian, they would be able to talk to it. "Entering orbit now," reported the pilot. Jake looked down at Zarian and smiled. It looked like a death trap, red sands, swirling storms, and no visible signs of life. But Jake had learned not to trust first impressions. "Take us down," he ordered. Back on Verdania, the planet had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a training ground where other species came to learn adaptation techniques from humans. The Kethmori had built new facilities that could simulate the conditions of any known world, allowing alien diplomats and scientists to experience controlled versions of environmental challenges. Elder Zinakari herself had come to study human methods. She worked with Lisa Carter to understand how humans approach problems differently than other species. "Your people do not seek to dominate their environment," the Elder observed. "But they also do not simply submit to it." "What is this middle path?" "Partnership," Lisa replied simply. "We look for ways to work with what we find, not against it." The results spoke for themselves. Species that had never been able to expand beyond their homeworlds were now successfully establishing colonies on planets they had once considered impossible. The hegemony military was sending officers to learn human tactical flexibility. Even the most advanced technological species were studying human problem-solving methods, but perhaps the most important change was in the Deathworld classification system itself. Dr. Emma Foster had been appointed to head the new planetary assessment board, instead of simply labeling worlds as impossible or dangerous. The new system evaluated planets based on the specific challenges they presented and the resources available to meet those challenges. There are no death worlds, Emma explained to a gathering of council scientists. There are only worlds we haven't learned to live on yet. The old class of paradise designation had been completely revised. Worlds were now rated not on how comfortable they were, but on how much they could teach the species that lived there. Verdania itself became the most sought-after assignment in the galaxy. Young people from dozens of species applied for the chance to train there to learn the adaptation techniques that humans had pioneered. Amy Carter had become something of a legend among these trainees. At only 11 years old, she could survive in environments that challenged adult aliens. She spoke several alien languages fluently and had formed friendships with creatures that most species feared. The secret, Amy told a group of young alien trainees, is not to think about surviving. Think about living. Think about growing. Think about making things better than you found them. On Zarian, Jake Morrison's team had been on the surface for only a week when they made first contact with the planet's native intelligence, crystalline beings that lived in the deep desert caves. The creatures had been avoiding contact with off-worlders for centuries, but they were curious about the humans who seemed unafraid of the acid storms. They want to know why we don't hide underground during the storms, Amy translated, reading the complex light patterns the crystal beings used to communicate. Tell them we learned to dance with the weather instead of hiding from it, Jake replied. Amy's eyes lit up with the joy of making new friends. She began a conversation with the crystal beings that would lead to discoveries about desert adaptation that amazed even the Keth Mori years later. When historians tried to understand how humanity had changed galactic civilization so completely, they would point to many factors: human adaptability, creativity, and refusal to accept limitations. The wisdom of the Keth Mori and their willingness to share knowledge with worthy partners. The courage of colonists who chose to grow instead of simply survive. But perhaps the most important factor was something simpler: the human belief that any challenge could be overcome, any problem could be solved, and any world could become home if you were willing to work for it. The Deathworld classification had indeed been a joke, but the joke was on those who thought some places were impossible to live. Humans had proven that with the right attitude, the right knowledge, and the right partners, anywhere could become paradise, and they were just getting started. Standing on the observation deck of the new council headquarters on Verdania, elders in Akari watched human and alien children playing together in gardens that had once been considered deadly. In the distance, ships regularly departed for worlds that had been abandoned as impossible, carrying mixed crews of humans and aliens working together to expand the boundaries of the possible. "The galaxy will never be the same," she said to Jake Morrison, who had come to join her. "Good," Jake replied. "It was getting boring anyway."